Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our session. Today, it's session number 3 in our series on automating SAP processes in the cloud. And specifically, we're going to be talking about how to optimize data and processes with artificial intelligence and machine learning, as well as with SAP Fiori. I'm Andrew Hayden. I'll be your host today. And joining me soon will be Sigrid Koch, one of our principal sales engineers, as well as Martin Munka, who's one of our product managers.
Thanks. Now let's take a look at how machine learning could potentially further increase the efficiency of these data-intensive business processes. I want to start by positioning AI and machine learning as one of many digitization trends that we see that are aimed to improve both your data and processes. The need to optimize and drive efficiency across the entire organization drives many digitization trends that affect your data and processes, and I listed some here. What we have seen from the previous use case example from Andrew is that there can be a lot of optimization potential in many business critical processes, but sometimes you need to apply multiple different solutions and redesign your processes to achieve the best results. Now, one of the trends that we have seen move from a hyped new technology into a productivity driver for business processes is AI and machine learning. On a high level, there are two ways to apply machine learning to business processes. It can either be embedded as part of an intelligent solution, or it can be developed standalone and integrated into a solution to augment a specific use case. The scenario that I want to talk about today is augmenting a business process in our Evolve solution by machine learning that is deployed outside of Evolve in the cloud and integrated into the Evolve process. And for those data-intensive processes that Andrew was talking about, machine learning is very interesting because the processes are about creating and maintaining critical SAP data itself. And machine learning is a technology that in its core builds on data and the quality of data. I think everywhere where you have a high potential for automation and a high amount of data involved in the process, the potential for machine learning can be high. The example that I want to show you today is the creation of material master data in SAP. For organizations, typically in the manufacturing industry, food and beverage industries, the footwear and apparel industries, that have a high amount of new product introductions and changes in any given year, that means a high volume of new material requests and changes to existing material master data in SAP. Now, these processes are highly manual and complex processes with lots of data entry error points. We see here an example web form to create new finished goods. It's not uncommon for organizations to have 200-300 fields or more on such a material request form. The data typically has to be collected and entered by different teams and can come from various sources. It therefore usually requires multiple collection steps, validation steps, review and approval steps in the process. Because of the volume and complexity of data, companies typically set out to define hundreds, if not thousands, of data validation rules that they implement. And that works great, and our solution provides the flexibility to support any amount and any complexity of rules with ease. However, the process to define and agree on business rules in the first place is often a lengthy and cumbersome process. Some of the main challenges in defining and establishing business rules are that they rely heavily on subject matter expertise and tacit knowledge, and often it requires the involvement of valuable resources. The second is that many rules affect data and process steps that are relevant for multiple functional areas and therefore require cross-functional alignment in the organization, and that can be very time-consuming. It can take companies months and sometimes more than a year to define and agree on all business rules. Then covering edge cases and hard-coded rules can be difficult, if not impossible. And so even with the best effort, hard-coded business rules will not guarantee 100% data quality. So what if you could eliminate the need for many of these rules by applying machine learning? That would reduce the effort, the time to solution, and complexity, and could therefore deliver huge savings and benefits to your organization. So we set out and have done an internal proof of concept to apply machine learning to a material master creation use case where machine learning provides data recommendations and data quality checks in the process. Machine learning replaced some of the rules that would normally be hard-coded in such a solution. The machine learning algorithm is hosted on the cloud outside of our Evolve workflow solution, and the data is exchanged via REST APIs in a synchronous way, meaning that predicted values from the machine learning algorithm are returned into the Material Master request web form more or less in real time. We built out a machine learning framework in our Evolve solution that applies the predicted values logically to specific form fields. The framework is extensible, and we can incorporate any machine learning algorithm into our solution. In fact, we tried both a custom-built machine learning algorithm as well as a standard machine learning algorithm provided by SAP. SAP has introduced what they call AI services on their cloud platform, and one of those provides data attribute recommendations for product data that we leveraged in our solution. On a high level, the Material Master creation process looks like this when machine learning is applied to support the process. The user opens the new material creation request form and enters the minimum number of fields that are needed by the machine learning algorithm as input fields to predict a certain output. The algorithm is then called and predicts an output based on these input fields. And our framework in Evolve applies those output fields to pre-populate and validate form fields. Let's take a look at a simplified example. This is a simplified example of a Material Master creation form. As I have mentioned previously, these forms typically have hundreds of fields. In this example, the user enters the fields on the top section where it says data input, like material description, category group, division, etc. Some of them have been pre-populated. The user picks a division here in this case from a drop-down list. Those are the input fields for the machine learning algorithm and calls the machine learning algorithm now, which predicts the output fields in the bottom section. The color coding here indicates that if a value was predicted above a certain confidence level, in this case 90%, it's green. If the predicted value has a confidence level below 90%, it's yellow. Now, those predicted values like plan, storage location, sales organization, MRP type are just recommendations, predicted values with a confidence level. The user still can override those values. In this case, for instance, choose a different MRP type and override the value that was returned by the machine learning algorithm. In this example, the user chooses P1, which is the value that wasn't returned from the machine learning algorithm. So the color changes to red to indicate that this value is outside of any of those returned values from the machine learning algorithm. But it doesn't stop the user from applying those values because they still can be valid values. In the subtitle area, we also show the second best predicted value, not only the highest value that is used to pre-populate those fields, but also if there is a second best value with the lower confidence level, it is displayed in the subtitle section here in this example. Now, all of this is something that can be designed according to the needs, the individual needs in the process, but it shows an example how machine learning can deliver this data. There are two advantages to this, right? If in a real example, you have hundreds of fields in the form and the machine learning algorithm can pre-populate hundreds of those. It simplifies the entire data entry process for the user. The second is that these predicted values and validations are applied in such a way that it takes the existing data into account and predicts not only certain values in this correlation, but can also, the machine learning algorithm can also predict ranges, for instance, for numerical values like volumes and weights and prices, etc. Something that typically is very difficult to accomplish with hard-coded rules. Another advantage is that machine learning learns with new data. So in this example, the new value for MRP type P1, once it becomes a new record in SAP, it's saved in SAP, will be taken into consideration the next time the machine learning algorithm runs. So of course, one record will not change the prediction, but if there are hundreds or thousands of new records created with a specific value, the machine learning algorithm will pick those new values up and change the prediction automatically. Something that if your business changes, your processes change, your data change, let's say you have a new plant where you would otherwise need to implement new rules, it can simplify the entire maintenance process of creating new rules, editing rules, and modifying new rules. I want to summarize some of the benefits that we saw and believe machine learning can deliver. First, machine learning can improve and simplify the data entry and decision-making process by providing these recommendations, especially if hundreds of fields can be pre-populated in a user-friendly way with highlighting the confidence level. Machine learning can improve the data quality because it mitigates the risks for guessing or other data entry errors. And machine learning can predict things like value ranges for numerical values, for example, for weights, volumes, prices, etc., or make predictions based on free text entries, which is often impossible to do with hard-coded rules. So it can do more than just replace some hard-coded business rules, but actually add new value to the process. Of course, it does reduce the need for hard-coded rules as well, which reduces the implementation time and complexity in the implementation and maintenance of a solution. But more importantly, it reduces the effort and time to define and establish those business rules in the first place. And as I mentioned before, this is often a very lengthy process. Therefore, apart from adding a new layer of data validation and providing additional value in the process, machine learning can reduce the overall time to solution in solution development. However, there are some limitations of machine learning that I want to point out. The first one to consider is that machine learning will not replace all business rules. You will still need to implement hard-coded rules, just hopefully a lot less. Then machine learning will not deliver 100% accuracy for all values. In some cases, the predictions might be 100%, but in many cases, the confidence level will be below 100%. So there is an element of confidence and judgment that comes with it. Machine learning is not a technology to replace the human in the loop like RPA. It augments the process and can increase the productivity and efficiency, but it does not replace the user. The third limitation is that you need enough data and good data. Machine learning makes predictions based on existing data, and so it requires a certain amount of input data, and the quality of your existing data has to be good. If your data is bad, you might need to cleanse it first before starting to build machine learning algorithms. In some cases, machine learning can help you to identify rules and bad data and can be used to identify the data that needs to be cleansed, but this has to be done first before the machine learning for the process is built. And there are many different machine learning models for different scenarios, so you might need to use multiple models in the process. And lastly, for new implementations, you might want to change the implementation approach and start with machine learning predictions to identify what can be predicted and where the gaps are before you build the hard-coded business rules to fill the gaps. And with this, I'll hand it over to Sigrid.
Thanks so much. Today I'd like to talk to you about automating your SAP Fiori processes. Traditionally, we've done SAP automation. And what does that mean? We've provided solutions for both data management, typically from the desktop, as well as process automation, typically done through a web browser. Our portfolio of products includes Studio, where you can build the SAP automations. That includes creates, updates, as well as extracts. Studio Manager to store those automations, provide approvals, as well as server-side execution and scheduling. And then Evolve, which layers on workflow for both the web and desktop front ends. Now, under Automate Studio, where we've built out those SAP automations, these are business author modules. So transaction is typically used for uploads, query for extracting data, whether that's extracting for updates or for creating quick operational reports, and direct, which allows you to use SAP BAPIs, or remote-enabled function modules, for efficient advanced interactions. So today we're introducing the SAP Fiori automation. So let's take a step back. SAP interfaces have changed throughout the years. So the GUI, which is still used by a lot of power users, then the GUI was moved to the web. And then SAP introduced the NetWeaver Business Client. So Fiori is the next generation. It provides a launch pad of customizable groupings of these apps, both standard and customized apps. And the users can customize the theme as well as options in the apps and groups if that's allowed. There are different kinds of apps. A transactional app to perform, for example, postings of journal entries, sales orders, purchase orders, and the like, but it also includes master data, whether that might be business partner, product, or anything else that's master data. There's also fact sheets, which provide information on SAP objects. And then analytics, which gives you real-time information and performance on various processes throughout SAP. And for our SAP Fiori automation, we are targeting transactional apps. So we're announcing that Fiori app automation, and it will target SAP recommended UI5 Fiori apps. It integrates with SAP through APIs. And all versions of SAP are supported, and there's no backend changes or installations required to use it. So let's take a look at a demonstration. I'm here in Studio, and I'm going to choose the Fiori automation, record from a Fiori app, and we can provide the login information to get to the Fiori app. I have that stored, so I'll just click Login, and we'll click Start Recording. And this should look very much like a transaction recording for those of you who are familiar with it. I'm going to go to the Products group, open Manage Product Master Data, and search for a product. I'll open it up, and then once it's opened, we'll swap into edit mode. Now we'll go to plant data because I want to update MRP information. So we'll go to plants, and we'll go ahead and select a line. Don't need to search. And we're working with plant 1010, and I'm now going to swap down to the MRP data and update a few of the fields. Now again, this can work also for creations as well as transactional type postings. So this is a draft-based app, so I have to click Apply and then Save. And once that's saved, we can go ahead and close this window, and we finish the first step. Record, we'll do the mapping, and then we can run it. So now that that's opened, it's got a number of log fields as well as SAP fields. We'll go ahead and disable attachments, and we'll go ahead and start mapping our message columns as well as the product data. We'll have that start in column C. And then we can set different attributes, like make it required, whether SAP requires it or not. So that will check prior to even attempting to post. And I'll go ahead and create some additional data so that we can test it out with multiple products in multiple plans. So there we go. We got a set of test data. And the first thing that you can do is validate this data. So we'll go ahead and choose validate. And what that's going to do is simply, once we save, is pass that information up to the Fiori app, but not save it or commit the changes. And if we get success, we're good to go. If we don't, then we'll get an error message, and it will tell us what the error is. Now again, this is creating the automation for the end users. They'll simply consume this once it's ready and tested. So there we go. We've got 4 successes. Now we can go ahead and attempt the run, which will actually commit those changes. So made the changes for the first record, and we'll go to the second one for the additional plant, and then we'll go to the additional material. And you'll see here, this is saved. And this is something a business user can create and test. So let's go take a look at the product and make sure that the changes were posted properly. It's always a good step when you're creating automations. And you'll notice that it also captured the plant. I didn't have to capture that or search for it. And you'll see there, the MRP controller and the availability checks have been updated. So again, Fiori automation, that works much like our transaction automation, but it's automating the Fiori apps, and it's making API calls in the back end, something a business user can both create and use to manage their data. So if you want early access, we're looking for customers who would want to be involved, share their requirements, and provide us feedback. Beta starts soon in mid-September. And if you'd like early access, please reach out. We're super excited to introduce this to you. Thank you.
So really quickly, just to recap what we've talked about so far. We talked about what's happening in the marketplace. We talked about some of those challenges that around the complex data-intensive processes that we all deal with within SAP. I walked you through a case study that showed you what's possible today, right now, before you even move to the cloud. And even if you're moving to the cloud, that same kind of benefit and value that the energy drinks company got is available to you right now. Charles talked to you a little bit more about sort of what we offer today from a cloud standpoint, from a hosted standpoint, and then the opportunities that are available with portals and also what APIs can do for you and what APIs we have available. Martin then came in and talked a little bit more about machine learning, where we are, and the proof of concept that we created with machine learning to really get a much better understanding of how does it work and what can it do for you from an automation standpoint. And finally, Sigrid talked to you about Fiori automation and the Fiori automation beta, which we currently have available for existing customers. Now, as she mentioned, if you want to become a Fiori automation beta customer, please let us know. There was information in the presentation, and we'll make sure to send out more information to those of you who attended. And finally, before we get to questions, I just want to leave you with this thought. And this is a quote from Justin Trudeau, who's the Prime Minister of Canada. And the quote is, "The pace of change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again." And those of us who live in the technology world kind of see this every day. And I think very firmly that this is one of those areas where automation can really help you manage and tackle the challenges that do come with that pace of change that's happening, that accelerating pace of change. We feel it all the time. And if you go back to what's happening in the world and the fact that people are looking to accelerate digital transformation, well, as you accelerate digital transformation, that pace of change gets even faster. Automation is one of those great ways that you and your organization can catch up with it and manage that pace of change more efficiently within your organization. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what we can do. And now let's bring the team back in. Let's talk to them and find out sort of what the answers to some of these questions are. So the first one, it looks like probably is from Martin. You are connecting to the machine learning algorithm through an API call. Does that mean there are options for which machine learning artificial intelligence provider I can choose? So can I choose different providers essentially?
Yes, absolutely. And in our proof of concept, actually, we tried it out with our own machine learning solution, but also with SAP, as I mentioned. So basically two different providers in our internal POC. And yes, absolutely, you can connect to any other provider as well.
Okay. For Sigrid, if I have a custom Fiori app, will it work? Will the Fiori automation work with it?
Yeah, in general terms, it should work with either standard or customized Fiori app. Absolutely.
Okay. And Charles, can you clarify whether Studio is now browser-based, or are we still talking about a desktop application, since you talked about a hosted offering now from Precisely?
Great question. It is still a desktop application, so Studio will still be a desktop application for the near term. We are actually doing some R&D into taking that off of the desktop and putting that in a browser client. So it is on our roadmap to move that into the browser and kind of become fully cloud, but for right now, it is still a desktop app.
Okay. And another one for you. A lot of companies have multiple SAP environments, including a possible mix of hosted and on-prem systems. So how well does the hosted Evolve or Studio Manager work in those kind of hybrid environments?
It works just fine. We have several customers actually that I've worked with personally that have sort of this mix of environments, this mix of systems, like you're describing. It really doesn't matter from an Evolve standpoint where the SAP server is, other than from a performance standpoint, right? Obviously, the ideal situation is that Evolve is as close to the SAP system as possible from a performance standpoint, but the connections are still going to work regardless of distance and regardless of whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. As long as the Evolve server can talk to that SAP system, there's nothing additionally that you need to do from the Evolve side to enable on-prem calls versus hosted calls versus anything else. So it's all happening natively. It's just a matter of making sure the connection is happening.
Okay. So Martin, you showed Material Master for your machine learning example. Can machine learning be applied to other, or have you applied machine learning to other use cases within SAP?
So we haven't in our POC, but we built the framework in such a way that it can be applied to basically any use case. It's not limited to Material Master use cases. I think as long as there is enough data and complex data, right, those use cases could be suitable for machine learning. So not all use cases are good use cases for machine learning where it makes sense or the effort to invest makes sense, but technically you can apply it to any use case.
Okay, thank you. And Sigrid, some SAP S/4HANA processes do not have Fiori apps yet for them. For those, what can I use? Can I still use Studio, or is there something else that you would recommend?
Yeah, well, SAP continues to come out with more and more Fiori apps with every release. But if you don't have it, or if you instead want to still automate through the back end, which is very efficient, you can use Studio, which is what Charles talked about, and use all of the good options like transaction, direct, and query to create your automations.
Okay. And I think one final question, and this is kind of open to everybody. Are we looking into, or is Precisely looking into creating a mobile app for our automation products? And if so, what would that look like, or what would you envision that looking like?
I'll take a stab at that one. We have looked at using a mobile app previously, particularly for Evolve and pulling up workflows and forms and being able to approve them from a mobile app. We've not necessarily found a great use case for it yet. We've kind of been talking to a few customers over the years about things that they want to get done with it, and just haven't really found the right fit. So if you do have a use case where you think that would be particularly useful for your solution or your process, we'd actually love to hear about it.
Right, and Evolve provides an adaptive display. So for those processes, I mean, you could potentially view them on a smartphone. However, most people are going to want to use a PC or a tablet or a web form. You can also interact with those solutions through email when you're approving and be able to view attachments and copies of the form. So in lieu of a mobile app, that's still possible today, but I agree that sometimes mobile apps are a good use case.
So you can do Evolve approvals and reviews through your email client on your phone today,
Correct.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, cool. That looks like all the questions we have for right now. If you have more questions or put them into the chat and we haven't managed to get to them, I do apologize. Just do know that somebody from Precisely will get back to you with an answer. So you can look for that in your email coming soon. Before we leave you, let's definitely continue this conversation around what we can do for you for automation in the cloud. You can find more information at precisely.com. We have more examples of demos and webinars and white papers and case studies. So there's a lot of information there. Or you can get in touch with us directly. You can get in touch with us through the Get in Touch button on precisely.com, or you can call us and we'll set up a 30-minute discussion to figure out how we can specifically help you and your needs around SAP automation. Charles, Martin, Sigrid, any final thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
just like to thank everyone for their time.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
Fiori automation beta is out now. Please sign up. We're excited to introduce it to you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. And thank you very much for attending. If you have questions, please contact us through precisely.com or through any of the emails that you receive as a result of attending this webinar. Thanks you very much and have a great day. Bye.